So I was able to get a hold of another San Diego Comic-Con exclusive item, yet again another Super 7 item. This is something they were able to put up after the fact, after the con. So I got it for, you know, standard con price, no markup, which is always fantastic. And this is definitely one of my more anticipated items. It's one I'm having a really hard time with opening, but we're going to do it. So today we're taking a look at the Princess of Power, She-Ra, and Hordak ReAction 2-pack. So this is a first for this particular line. I don't know that they've done it in general, honestly, where we've got two figures on the same oversized card. So it's kind of a double wide, I guess is the way to say it. And we've got them both there in the bubbles. We've got them with some amazing Jason Edmiston artwork. This stuff is just fantastic. This is really why I don't want to open it, but I'm going to have to. We're going to save the card. And then the back has got some classic Filmation style She-Ra artwork, as well as just a look at the figures themselves, and not much else, a little bit of a write-up. But the front's where it's really at. This is just fantastic artwork. He does a fantastic job on all of these, and of course that's why I saved these cards. So let's pull these guys out and take a look. Here they are out of the package, and these are just as fun and cool as I had hoped and expected they would be. I've got an interesting history with this line because, honestly, I never really expected I would ever care about them, but for some reason, ReAction figures in a number of ways, not just Masters of the Universe, has sucked me in, and I am very much a fan of pretty much everything Super 7 does, even for some of the licenses that I personally don't really care about. Some of these still look pretty cool. So we're going to run through all the normal stuff. Of course, there's not as much to talk about here because these guys only have 5 points of articulation, but we'll run through that real quick, show you how they move, and then we'll take a look at more about their design. So as far as moving them around, I mean, there's really not a great deal to talk about here. I'm going to move She-Ra to the side for a second, and we're going to focus on Hordak. So you can rotate his head. You can rotate his arms. He has no waist twist. You can move his legs back and forth. There you go. 5 points of vintage style articulation. No real issues to speak of. The only real problem, and I'm going to bring this back in, is that for She-Ra, and this is more just of a design thing, you know, she's got a skirt, so you're going to get the weird thing, I don't even know how to describe this anymore, with the crotch joint there. It's just going to break up the sculpt, and it is what it is. I don't really think there's any other way to get around it. They become kind of bricks when they have dresses. She just happens to have a skirt, so it looks kind of funny, but it is what it is. I'm not going to complain about it. Where these figures do it for me, though, is in the sculpt work, in the design aesthetic, everything about just this look, this minimalistic, old, vintage Kenner look. It just really does it for me, and I really like these figures. I think they're fun, and there is some differences going on here between these two in the paint application department and the previous figures, at least from a paint finish type of feel almost. So there is, at least for the whites on these two, a decidedly matte finish going on. You can really tell, you can honestly kind of feel it too, but they look very much more matte and not nearly as glossy as some of the other figures. Like the rest of Hordak's body is pretty glossy, but his head is definitely not. And She-Ra's dress is definitely not. But the rest of her looks pretty standard for a ReAction figure, which I find odd, but I don't find to be a problem. I like it. I think it looks good. And I really like it on Hordak's head. I think it looks very similar to what we got with the Motu Classics Filmation version of Hordak that Super 7 put out, and you know I absolutely love that figure. So these two look really, really good. Paint applications on them are very solid. If I have one true gripe on these, is that maybe from a design perspective, Hordak looks like he is kind of a child almost. Like he looks like a little boy Hordak, and I'm not sure exactly what it is that does it. I know somewhere in the head that's coming through for me. It could just be the fact that he's scaled down and everything's a little bit smaller that really throws him off. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's something that I've kind of thought about since the minute I saw it, is that, yeah, he looks like kind of like a, you know, an 8-year-old Hordak, not necessarily just a smaller Hordak. She-Ra, on the other hand, I think looks pretty solid. I think she looks very, very good in terms of her normal design kind of scaled down and minimalized into a vintage style figure. I like the metallic gold use of the paint all over. Her eyes are pretty straight. And paint apps in general are pretty solid. I mean, they're minimal, and that's kind of what we do with this line. It's nothing crazy. I don't have any problems with the minimalistic approach with the paint, and it just looks good. Hordak, though, he still does have kind of the little boyish look, but at the same time, I like him, and, you know, it's still that Hordak design, and, you know, I've said it before that he is my preferred villain when it comes to Motu. I just love his design, in terms of the big bads anyway. Skeletor's always #1, but I always love Hordak's design, just from a design standpoint, and I love the bat symbol on his chest and everything. Always looks good. So let's take a look at accessories. You know we've got one, but there is, of course, something else in this package. So for She-Ra, we've got her sword, and this is kind of standard stuff that we've seen with this line. You know, it's the standard sword, it's got the jewel painted on it, it has the kind of handlebar that we saw with the vintage style He-Man figures, and you know, it's similar to what sword He-Man has, similar to that kind of stuff. So we've seen this design, well, this type of sword, maybe not necessarily this design because it's her sword. But the really cool accessory for me is that we have Hordak's arm cannon, and it is an entirely replaceable arm. So what you do is you pop one of these arms out, and I would honestly, you know, maybe give a word of caution when you're doing that. Don't just like kind of yank it out, because you could maybe crack the body doing that. I'm not sure you're going to, but I wouldn't chance it either. So just kind of, you know, shimmy it back and forth, and it'll just slide out. And this thing, I mean, it's quintessential Hordak. It's very Filmation, and I dig everything about the Filmation show, and I love the arm cannon. You know, it's my favorite accessory with the Filmation Classics figure that we got of Hordak. This looks really good. It's got nice solid paint apps on it. And this will be how I display this figure, or at least this is how he's going to go when he's entombed in my ReAction carrying case. So overall, it's pretty obvious. I really like these figures. You know, they aren't for everyone, and I have learned that more and more and more recently with interactions of people online through comments on other videos or just talking to folks in other forums or Facebook or whatever. So they're not for everybody. They are for me. I really like them. I think they're cool. They remind me of older figures from when I was a kid, and they look very nice as well. They come packaged on exceptionally amazing artwork that you just have to keep. I mean, don't throw it away. If you open them, be like me, keep the artwork at the very least. And I think Super7's doing a bang-up job with this line in general. I'm really, really, really hopeful that we're going to get more Horde characters. I hope this isn't a one-off thing. You know, give me a Grizzlor, give me a Mosquitor. But really, come on, what we do need is a scented Stinkor figure. Just throwing it out there. So that's going to do it for this look at the Super7 Princess of Power She-Ra and Hordak ReAction Figure 2-pack. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And until next time.